Today we're going to have a quick talk about rule disputes in Warhammer 40K and a few ideas for resolving them quickly so we can get back to purging Xenos on the tabletop. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. So rules disputes in 40k then. I think it has always been the case in Warhammer that the rules have been fairly complicated and don't always necessarily interact with each other amazingly well, which is certainly not helped by the sheer amount of units that are on offer and the amount of unique special rules that they all have. The special rules do add more flavour to the games, but they do make everything a little bit more complicated. It does mean that likely there are going to come times in a game where you and your opponent don't necessarily agree with one interpretation of the rules, or have other slight conflicts of interest on the table, whether that's gotcha moments, where the opponent pulls a surprise rule that they didn't see coming out of the bag, or even things like differing opinions on the distance measured between two units, or whether or not people can get line of sight or cover or things. If someone feels like they've been hard done to in a game, then it can really sour the mood, even if the other player is just trying to play it as they believe it should be played. So let's have a bit of a talk about the ways to resolve rule disputes in a way that keeps both people happy. So firstly, when I disagree with my opponent and the answer isn't readily available through something that I absolutely know and can reference in the rulebook, or if it's open to interpretation, such as line of sights or other things like that, I would typically ask myself, does this really matter as to the outcome of the game, or is it a completely meaningless battle to pick, where there's a very low likelihood that this exact rule interpretation is actually going to change the battle? When I was running Horde Guard, typically if there was any dispute that involved the loss of a single conscript or two, then I'd typically be not too bothered about removing them. It's very rare that any one model in a Horde list is going to be the difference between victory and defeat. Not saying it's impossible. Obviously, if they're the last model in a unit on an objective, then it's worth trying to get the rules right if you think that they should be played in your way, but sometimes it can just be worth giving way to preserve the general good humour of the game. Not waste 5 or 10 minutes looking stuff up in rulebooks, or even if you're looking from a purely self-interest perspective, then it might mean that giving way on a minor battle might mean that your opponent's a little bit more likely to be generous with another call later in the game. Things like messing up sequencing are quite a big one with this one. Say if your opponent forgot to move something in the movement phase and then cast one psychic power, then realises their mistake. If you go back and let them move their unit, then it's likely that they'll give way to you for a similar mistake if you make one later in the game. Generally outside the hyper competitive setting, most people are fairly happy to play to intent, and if something is very minor or absolutely obvious that the unit would have done it anyway, then most people in my experience tend to be pretty generous with this. If it's a rules dispute, it's usually worth just looking it up after the game if it wasn't a big deal actually at the time, and then inform your opponent and both of you will know for next time. I've also found that, say if it's just whether or not a model gets +1 to hit or not with a shot or something like that, you could literally actually roll the dice, and if it doesn't make the difference for whether or not you get that +1 or not, then it doesn't even matter if the rule was right anyway, and you can just carry on playing and then maybe look at looking up the rule if the dice roll is a result that does matter. If you have decided that the rule is important and could actually impact the game in some way, then generally the easiest and fastest way to resolve disputes is to ask someone who's reasonably hot on the rules in the vicinity. Whether you're in a gaming club or if you're at a tournament, you could ask people on the next table. They might be able to settle the dispute then and there and just say, yes, it's this because of this, and if you want to check the rule, then it's in this book. In general, it tends to be a lot easier and faster than pouring through rule books. It can also be good if you can get an impartial party to give a casting vote as to whether or not units get line of sight or not, or whether or not they're just in range or just out of range for an attack. If you are asking a third party to have a look at this sort of thing though, then be prepared to accept their ruling even if it's not in your favour. By its very nature, any average player will be ruled against 50% of the time, so certainly don't take it to heart if they do side with the other player. If you are in a tournament setting and the rules dispute matters, then you can always ask a TO, explain your position calmly and your line of reasoning for why the rules should be played in a certain way, and then be prepared to accept their decision because after all it is their event and their word should be final. Thirdly, if there isn't anyone about who can easily be asked, or say you just don't want to trouble the time for the tournament organiser in a tournament, then you should certainly have a look in the rulebook or chapter approved or any relevant FAQs for Games Workshop, which I know are very extensive, but at least we do have answers to these common questions now, where in the past we had no FAQs for a long time. This is the main reason why it's worth bringing rulebooks and any rule sources that you need along to a game, and it can be a bit of a pain if you don't have them. If you don't have the rules for your army, then it's going to be hard to back up any sort of rules interpretations about them that you might have. I think that very few people have FAQs stored on their phone for Warhammer 40k, but they're usually fairly easy to download if you have any internet and can sometimes be very helpful. I would recommend having a read through your own faction's FAQ at some point, just to see if there's any obvious rule changes or clarifications for certain units or bits of gear. You don't necessarily need to remember everything, you just need to know that it's there and you can look it up as and when it's needed. Hopefully between the two of you, you can show each other the rules and then agree on one interpretation or the other. If all of these fail, if it really does matter, you've got no one to ask nearby, and you can't find the rules from the nearby rulebook, then you can just dice off for it, just roll off and the winner can choose which interpretation to go with this time, and then you can look it up sometime after the game. You could also potentially dice off straight from the start if you really can't be bothered to look up or go seeking advice. It can be a perfectly reasonable one if it doesn't matter too much and neither player is particularly fussed. If you want to get a little bit technical, then you can use either online forums or Discord to get some pretty spot-on advice really quite quickly. I know Daka, the forum, has a bit of a mixed reputation at best, but their You Make the Call forum is actually really good and has some people who are very knowledgeable about the game. There's been at least 2 times in games where I've literally halfway through the game posted a question on it, and within a minute or two someone's got back to me and said this is the way that the rule works and why. And we've actually been able to correct the rule during the game, and it can be quite handy if you don't have anyone else to ask as a second opinion. If you use Discord at all, then we do have an Auspex Tactics Discord server. The link is down in the description below. It's free to use, and it does have a rules queries section, where you can get the advice of quite a lot of 40k enthusiasts very quickly indeed. Overall though, I will try and remember the most important thing, which is that we're playing a game and it should be fun, and a rules dispute of any sort on the table really isn't worth falling out with your opponent about. In more casual settings with friends, I'd much rather lose a game than get into any sort of actual heated argument about something. It's really not very clever for a hobby that's supposed to be fun. On the flip side of that though, that does go both ways, and I don't think most people would find it very polite if their opponent insisted every single unclear rules dispute went their way rather than yours. If things are genuinely unclear, despite advice from others and consulting any rulebooks, you really should have a bit of give and take, rather than the more assertive player just forcing through their opinion each time. So certainly be mindful of your opponent's ideas and feelings, even if you're absolutely certain that you're right in a ruling. Anyway, I hope that's been a little bit of helpful discussion around the subject. With all its complexity and no real refereeing or anything, 40k is still very much a gentleman's game, and I think it's important that both players work together to patch rules disputes, or I don't think it's very likely that either player is going to have a great time. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the subject down in the comments below. If you've ever seen any disputes that have got out of hand, or perhaps you or others could have handled better, or if there's any other ways to resolving them, and get us all back to playing Warhammer. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for more 40k content every day. And if you've been enjoying the channel recently, then I'd just like to mention the Patreon page. It does keep the channel going and the videos coming, and I wouldn't be able to focus all this time on making YouTube videos without it. So if you are watching pretty regularly, then any contributions are massively appreciated. A big thank you to the channel's current Patreons for keeping this thing going. In any case, a big thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.